before we start this video, a large thank you to a name I unfortunately cannot pronounce. Thank you very much for the support, my friend Zane, Muhammad, David, and Friday for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And as always, a massive and immense thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their massive support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely and greatly appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello guys, I am here in my scene view, and I have my elevator little interactable thing here. You can see here this little collision box is my collider, but I'm going to create a new empty game object as a child of the elevator platform. I'm going to call it collision. I'm going to copy this box collider and paste it here. Now, why am I doing that? Well, we don't have an interactable collider on this right now, and I want to make that. So I'm going to remove this box collider and replace it with another one, and I'm going to change this layer to interactable. Like so, and now I'll pop this other box collider that I had on here that I just did off camera for a second, and I'm set it to a trigger. So this is the interactable collider here now. And next I'm going to go to the platform object again, and I'm going to open up the elevator interactable, and I'm going to zero out these destinations because I was just testing something before I started the video. And obviously destination low is wherever it's at, so you copy this and then paste the transform or the position down here. Now this is why I made it a child of a main object, because now when we go back to the scene, you can see here if I move the platform up, the only thing we need to change is the Y position for destination high. So in my case, it's 4.5. So I take that position and then go to destination high, and boom, there it is. Looks good. Now I can zero it back out. And this is one of the benefits of having it as a child object. It makes the destination high low setup, in my opinion, easier. Make sure you onTick is static for the elevator platform or it will not move. Very important. I've dragged in some sound effects I've yoinked from Nephilim here for my elevator moving and stopping. If you don't have any, make sure you check for null so it doesn't throw you an error. You don't need to have any. Obviously, just prototype something right now, it's totally fine. Now, under activate elevator, under the elevator interactable script, we're going to say is rising. Let me check my Nephilim notes. I'm just realizing we don't need to pass this. Nephilim handles it a bit differently. We can just start the coroutine and pass the is rising. We don't need an if-else statement. So we're just going to say start coroutine, move elevator coroutine, and I'm just going to pass is rising inside this coroutine here like so. There we go. I'm actually going to change how I do that in Nephilim. That's a bit more streamlined. Anyway, over here, add an audio source to your elevator platform, or if you're using some kind of like audio world manager where you instantiate an audio source or move one, do that now. Put in your elevator interactable collider, and then over here on the elevator interactable script, I'm going to call my awake method. Whoops, got to override it. So I'm going to say override awake, so we get the awake from the interactable script. I'm going to say elevator audio source is equal to get component audio source. Now, down here, where we're checking if the character is active, this is supposed to be make sure they're not inactive. So put an exclamation point there if you don't have it. It's supposed to be if the character is inactive, remove it. Don't remove it if it's active, otherwise the elevator won't work. So now if I go to my elevator platform and activate the lift, so you can see here my character as I go on and off. My character is on the elevator, jumping on and off makes that fine. If we start the elevator, oh, look at that. It appears to work fine. But look, do you notice my feet? This is because we're matching the Y transform of the elevator. However, we have an offset. Now, why did I give this offset? Because, like I said, not all elevators will be the same height, and it's going to try to match you to the position of the game object, which is oftentimes lower than the position of the object itself. So this is easily remedied by tweaking this offset. I'm going to try 0.1, and that looks perfect. So what you want to do is get the exact height of the platform that you're on, and that's what your offset, not site, is going to be. And this looks quite nice, and I can jump and I can move around, and it looks good. But there is a small issue I'm going to show you later, not right now though, we'll get to it in a moment. But this is totally fine for now, provided you don't try to jump off the elevator when it's moving. But we'll get to that, like I said, in a moment. So let's go and move on. Go back to the scene view here. I'm going to make sure I set my offset at 0.1 and save it. Now, I'm going to unpack this prefab for just but a moment. And I'm going to go to my prefabs, and I'm going to go to interactable objects maybe. Now I'll just create a new folder, and we'll call this interactables. I just see I have interactable objects just as I made this. That's my bad. Okay, so that should have been put in interactable objects. I'm going to go and add that as a prefab. I'm going to add a network object to this prefab. That's very important. Add the parent as a prefab, of course. Now if I go into the prefab, I'm going to remove the network object from the elevator interactable because you only need one on the parent. We're going to use this as an in-scene network prefab. And if you forget what those do, we basically don't need to spawn them with a spawner of sorts. Make sure it's in your default network prefabs. Mine is. It usually gets automatically added there to your default list, but just in case it doesn't. Or if you have separate lists like I do in Nephilim because you have a lot of objects. But here's a refresher if you want to go check it out. In scene place network objects. This is good for interactive world objects that are typically easier to place in scene than spawn. For example, doors, blah, 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 if it unlocks. But we're using it for an elevator, which also works just fine. So if I go on the lift now and come up, you can see that's great. But if I jump off here, I'm just going to come down for a second. I can't call the elevator back up. So that is our new issue. We want to be able to call the elevator. So what are some ways we can recall the elevator? Well, number one, we can make an elevator interactable, we'll call elevator interactable. This will call the elevator to its set destination. So the high interactable will call it at a high position. The low one will call it a low. All right, that's cool. But then how do we link the call elevator to the elevator? So there are two very simple ways to go about this, and both are honestly fine for the situation. Method one is we create them under the parent of the main elevator object with their own rigid bodies interactable scripts and link them to the elevator via a property. So we'll have one that's high and one that's low, and we'll put them under the same massive parent, and then we can link them. Option two is we create them as separate interactable objects in the scene. We give them an ID along with the elevator, and we link them via the world object manager. So basically they'd search for their proper identification on spawn and try to find the elevator. But we're going to use option one because it's a lot more simple in my opinion. But if you prefer two, then go ahead and try it. Now pause the video, give it a try, seriously. Pause the video right now. Okay, now I am back. Now I'm going to create an empty object under the elevator parents. I'm going to call this call elevator. We're going to make two of these. Still not tell you to pause the video if you haven't done it. If you haven't paused the video, you totally should and give it a try. So let's call this, or let's make it interactable. Let's put a rigid body on it. Let's make sure the rigid body is kinematic. Don't want it to move anywhere. I'm going to freeze the position and rotation. And I'm going to add a component of a type box collider. Now you could just move the actual transform if you want, but I'm just going to move the box collider via the size and the center. And there we go. That'll be my first position right there, right in front of the elevator. So this is obviously going to be the bottom call. Now I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this destination high, just so it's very clear when I'm looking at what all of this is. And I'm going to position this, well, I need to go back to the scene to see where this is going to go, actually, but I'm going to position this at the top where the elevator is going to stop. Now I'm going to add a script to this called call elevator interactable. And I'm going to delete the start and update functionality, drop in my namespace as is per tradition. I've saved the script in my folder, and I'm going to start writing some logic. We are going to make this derive from the interactable base class. Very good. And we're going to make a serializable field up here for an elevator interactable, and this is going to be the main elevator this is linked to. So you can link this manually in the prefab instead of calling it awake, or you can try to get it awake by getting in parent if you want, whatever, it's up to you. Next we're going to say public list player manager. This is players within the interaction trigger. So this is equal to a new list. No Unity, not NUI framework. I don't know why it defaults to that and not system collections. I feel like system collections is much more widely used, but that's okay. We're going to manually type in using system.collections and using system.collections generic for the list, and collections for the coroutine we're going to need later on. And I'm just going to put those above for some reason because I want them to be above the Unity engine. All right, so we've made a new list of players within the interaction trigger. Why do we need this? Well, I'm going to get to that, but basically we want to disable the interaction while the elevator is moving for anybody who has this as interactable. Next is make a private coroutine, wait for elevator travel coroutine. And then let's make a serializable field bool is top destination. We're going to say true, but obviously if it's not the top, it's got to be the bottom, because like I said in the previous video, I'm making my elevators binary. It's either top or bottom. There's not multiple stops. If you're doing multiple stops, you could set up a list of some sort for all the destinations. Now we could say players within the interaction radius is our header up here. And I'll just move this coroutine down here. And I'm going to call this header top or bottom call. And up top, I'll say elevator. I think this one is going to run a little bit longer than 20 minutes, but I'm going to have this fully working by the end of the video because I want to, and then we're going to work on different types of elevators in another video, maybe using buttons and stuff instead. Okay, let's copy and paste these two functions for add list of characters in elevator from our elevator interactable and remove. And all we're going to do is we're going to use the list that we have here, and we're going to make it require a player manager, not a character, because only players can have interactables. AI characters cannot. And we're not going to set the character to his riding lift. That's not what we're going to use this for. We're just going to copy this function to add and remove it from this list. All right, let's do a for loop also. And whenever we do this, we're going to iterate through the list and check for any null entrances, or null entries, sorry, and we can remove them. Now, why are we doing that? This is a case where you could have a player drop connection in the middle of a game when they're in this radius, and then that would create their old variable as a player as a null entry. So if you don't check for a null, you're going to get an error and that could break stuff. So this is especially important where if you have anything that a player is involved with in your game and they can drop connection, if you're ever iterating through a list of players, don't forget. You should do null checks anyway, just in case, because there's so many edge cases you can't think of, but always do it in this case because this was very obvious. All right, that looks good. So we have a way to iterate through a list of our characters that are within the radius. Now, right below add character to list of characters in elevator, we're going to say players with an interaction trigger.add. And then we're going to say if wait for elevator travel coroutine does not equal null, we're going to say start coroutine, or stop coroutine, sorry, wait for travel coroutine. And then we're going to say wait for elevator travel coroutine is equal to start coroutine, check for characters in the trigger. But this doesn't exist yet, so we're going to make it though right now. All right, let's go ahead and do just that. Down here, I'm going to say private I enumerator, check for characters in the trigger, or in trigger, sorry. There's no the. And we're going to say while elevator, as in our elevator interactable variable up there, dot elevator is rising dot value, or elevator is descending dot value. So if you don't use these, you would need a elevator is moving flag. We're going to say yield return null. So while it has movement of any kind, we simply return. Now, we're going to do a for loop again, and we're going to check our interaction trigger once more, because if this is iterating through and someone happens to leave and the list changes, we want to make sure we remove the null entries as to not cause an error. So we're going to say always check for null in case someone drops out while the coroutine is running. And if the character's interaction trigger I is null, we're going to remove at, or continue. You don't need to remove them, to be honest, just continue. And then we're going to say if top destination and elevator dot network position value equals elevator dot, oh, is that private? Yes, it is. Okay, make your destination high and your destination low a public variable. Or make a getter for them if you want, if you're afraid they can be changed somehow. If is top destination and elevator dot network position value is equal to destination low. So if this is the top position and the elevator has gotten to the bottom, then we can say players within interaction trigger. We can add the interaction to list, this. And then we can do the opposite. We can say if is not top destination, so if this is the bottom destination and the elevator has gotten to the top, then we know it's done, obviously. And then we can add the interaction to the list. Okay, cool. Now, let's do an override interact. And this one's going to be very simple. So when you interact with this interactable collider, what happens? Well, let's erase the base. We don't want that. We don't want to disable interaction collider after you interact. We're going to say elevator dot, where's it to? Oh, it's private. Make the activate elevator server RPC public. And we're going to say elevator dot activate elevator server RPC. That's all you need there. Super simple. Now right above this, let's override our on trigger enter and our override on trigger exit. So on trigger enter, we're going to want to say player manager player is equal to other dot get component player manager. If it's null, as you guessed it, we're going to return. And of course, if the player does not equal null, we're going to add the character to list of characters in the elevator, like so, and vice versa. We're going to do the same thing on the on trigger exit, but we're going to remove them. Okay, looks good. Minimize that. Now right below our check for characters and trigger, I'm going to make a public void remove interaction from players, and then make one for add interaction in players. Now what am I doing here? Well, like I said, when the elevator starts moving, if someone's within this interaction trigger, we want to remove their ability to move the elevator. So these are used if a player is standing in the call elevator interactable, but then another player starts the elevator. So if you're standing there waiting for it, this temporarily removes the option to call the elevator, but returns it once the elevator movement has stopped. So if you're in the interaction zone to call the elevator and I started it up, I want to remove that from you temporarily as an option, because that would be weird if you could just call the elevator after I've started it. So we're going to say player manager, player. If the player equals null, return. If the player is not the owner, also return. And then also, if this is remove interaction, we're just going to simply remove the interaction from their list, this. And on the add interaction, we do the inverse. If the player is equal to null, though, we still return. If the player is not owner, we return, but then we add the interaction. And if you need to, close all pop-ups. I'm making a note here because I do that in Nephilim. I don't think the way I set it up in this video or this series, though, we need to do it. This is a little bit different. So you should be fine. I'm going to test it in game anyway. Don't worry, but I'm 99% sure that we're fine without calling that. Okay, let's do the same thing here, but like I just said in reverse, and we can actually copy and paste this. You want to do the check, though, for if this is top destination, destination is low, yada, yada, yada. You could actually even just now call return interaction to player on that coroutine instead if you want, because I realize that the logic is identical. So return interaction to players, we're actually going to remove player. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm going to one-up Nephilim, make this even more simple. Instead of passing a player, let's just iterate through the loop and do the exact same thing we do here for check for interactions trigger. So let's I'm gonna change Nephilim after this video because this is actually even more streamlined. See, that's the benefit of looking over something 4 times. You think of a simpler way to do it, and it looks quite obvious looking back on it. Like, why didn't I do this? So we're gonna iterate through the list, and then we'll check for ownership in the list, check for null in the list, and then we just at the end here add it back if you are the owner and if it's not null. So then we don't need to supply a player variable. We just literally used the list that we have already generated on this script. Brilliant. All right, that looks good. And we can copy and paste that right there. Excellent, exactly the same. Very good. Now, remove player interaction from players and add interaction players. Now, on move elevator coroutine, on our commentary, you can see to do, when we have the recall interactables, we want to remove the trigger from anybody standing in those interactables. Okay, well first, we need a reference to our interactable call elevator high and low. Now again, if you're using multiple locations, just make a list and do a for loop and iterate through them all and call this. So, serialized field, call interactable, low destination recall, done. All right, cool. Copy, paste. And then we're gonna say, hi, destination recall. My voice did something really weird just now, wow. Okay, then right below here, we're going to say low destination recall dot remove interaction from players, and then do the same thing with the high destination recall. Very good. And then we're gonna do the opposite right below here. I should have made another comment somewhere. Yes, to do, make recall interactables and give the interaction back. So do the same thing, but instead of calling remove, call, we're gonna say return, remove and return. Surely having 2 of those sound somewhat similar is not going to be confusing for some people, hopefully not. Now on our interactable text, I'm going to say call lift, I'm going to drag in my interactable collider, and we're going to untick host only interactable because I want the homies who join to be able to use this as well, obviously. Untick host only interactable on your elevator platform as well, unless you only want the host to be the one controlling the elevators. That's kind of messed up, I wouldn't do it, but I'm not going to judge you. Now let's go and paste the call elevator interactable on the high and low and drag in the elevator as a variable, obviously, and make sure you tick high and low on or his top or his bottom destination properly like that. And drag in these high and low interactables on your main elevator interactable. A lot of dragging here going on. And then I'm going to tick is trigger on both of those, and then we're good to go. Obviously, get rid of the base.interact on your call elevator interactable. That's my bad. Okay, so here you see that I'm in my scene view and I can activate the lift. That's great, right? So we're going up and now I can come down and I can call the lift. And then, yeah, sure, it comes down. However, we do have an issue. I'm going to show you here in a moment. So if I get on the elevator here and activate the lift, you can see though I'm on the list of characters in the elevator, but look, why am I going up like that? Well, as you can see, I didn't actually leave the list of characters in the elevator. Now, why is that? Well, I messed up. When you disable a box collider, like this trigger, you actually don't leave when you leave its radius because obviously it's no longer active. And the trigger collider is our collider used to actually enable the elevator, which we disable when it starts. So to remedy this, make the first elevator platform on the default layer. And then what you want to do is basically, we're going to make a new object down here, and we're going to make another interactable. So this elevator interaction script, it stays the same. You can still interact on this. However, we now need another child game object here for the elevator trigger. What this is going to do is it's going to be our own interactable object, and this was in Nephilim too. I just completely forgot to cover it. So our close is within the elevator, and this one always stays on, but its only purpose is to update the elevator with who is coming or going. Because you see, we have to disable the interaction trigger on the elevator when it starts if we want to send the pop-up away. But we need a way to know when the player leaves the elevator. So this is where this comes in. So I'm going to call this is on elevator trigger. And this is going to be very simple, like the simplest script ever. It's just simply going to be you could call this an event trigger, I guess. But all we're going to do is use on trigger enter. And we're going to have a link to a serializable field here for an elevator interactable. And we're simply going to on trigger enter if a character enters, add them to the elevator. And if they leave, remove them from the elevator. And that's it. This makes it so we can have the other box collider as the interactable collider on our elevator that we use to actually move the elevator up and down, that we disable when it starts so we can't interact with it again. So this is pretty simple. And elevators, they're simple in concept, but if you want to get them to work nicely, especially with netcode, it just requires a bit of moving parts, I guess you could say. I still think it's pretty simple once you really think about it. I'm sure all you guys could figure this out through trial and error. It took me a lot to figure it out through trial and error the first time I was doing it to get everything to move properly with netcode. It makes it look simple when I make a 50-minute couple videos and there it is, it's working, but it was definitely several hours of me just trying different things. Anyway, I digress. Make these add and remove functions on the elevator interactable public, and then on trigger enter, search for a character, and if it's not null, add it to the list. On trigger exit, do this the opposite of that. Search for a character. If they're not null, remove them from the list and save that. And what you want to do is make this actually come back to elevator interactable 2, remove the adding and removing of the character on trigger enter, and completely remove the on trigger exit call. You don't need those there. So now we're going to go within the elevator platform. I'm going to make the trigger and link the elevator, and you can see here my trigger box is about the same size as the elevator trigger box. I'm going to make it rigid body. I'm going to make it default layer is fine, and I'm going to freeze the rotation position. I'm going to make it interactable actually because it's on the interactable layer. It's fine. And now I'll make a collision game object just like I said before, and I'll put that tiny little box collider here, like so, and I'll paste this right under here like that. So I got my collision and I got my trigger under the collision, which you don't need to do, but I'm just going to put it there. And this box collider here on the elevator platform is going to be my plain old interactable collider. So I'm going to widen that up a bit. There we go. So it looks fine. So I have my trigger for when you enter the elevator. I have my box collider to start the elevator, and then I have my collider that you stand on. There's a lot of colliders, but this is the most efficient way to make it work, the way it's set up. So check this out. We can jump, and we can move around the elevator, and we can jump off the elevator, and it looks totally fine. There you go, guys. So now you have a way to have a moving elevator. You can pop off here, and everything is working as intended. Now, I haven't tested this in the Elden Ring project with multiplayer, but this is the exact same formula I use in Nephilim, which I've ran thousands of times with my friends. So if you do have any issues though, if you're playing with your friends and you notice that it's not syncing up properly, let me know. I'll come back and address this immediately. I will do investigations. But like I said, I've just ripped this from Nephilim with the way it moves, and I've tested it 1,000 times. Works totally fine. Now, on the next video, I'm going to still cover one more type of elevator, as I'm sure people will want to see the generic Elden Ring Dark Souls standing on the button elevator. So this is going to use a lot of the same logic, but the way it's going to work basically is that instead of going and interacting that way, you're going to stand on a button. And when someone presses the button is going to go down and stay down while the elevator is moving. And then once the elevator gets to the top or the bottom, provided nobody's standing on the button, it will release. And I think that is a great amount of information for you to try to do that ahead of time if you want to learn something. And that'd be really cool because you can use a lot of what we got here, but there's still some stuff you'd have to investigate. And I think it will be a cool learning experience. Okay, guys, that's it for me. Thank you for a fantastic year, by the way. I hope this new year is filled with a lot of fun and productivity for all of you. I wish you success in all your creative endeavors. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the series by liking and commenting to those that do. Thank you so much to my Patreons for helping me keep my lights on. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you next week.